You think you're making choices, but if you're like most people, your mind is on autopilot 95% of the time. Have you ever felt like life was happening to you? Like you've been doing everything right, showing up, working hard, caring for everyone, and yet something inside whispered, "This isn't it." What if I told you that that's not failure? It's the first stage of awakening. Most people never move beyond it. But when you do, when you realize life isn't just happening to you, but can begin to happen by you, everything starts to change. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand why this shift happens, but you'll start to recognize the exact moment your own consciousness begins to awaken. Before we go deeper, I want to bring up something I shared in an earlier video called the 6 levels of consciousness. They move from life happens to you to life happens as you. This month, we're walking that path together, one level at a time. And today, we begin at the very first step, waking up from unconscious living. For 16 years, I lived what looked like a good life, a stable career in the world of hazardous waste and spill control, leadership titles, a corner office. I had it all. Everyone else said I made it too, all right? But somewhere between the early morning meetings and the endless reports, I stopped hearing myself. One afternoon, I remember staring at the same stack of regulatory documents I had been reviewing for 100 days in a row. The sunlight hit the paper just right, and for a second, everything went quiet. In that silence, I felt it, that hollow ache that whispers, "You are meant for more than this." I brushed it off because that's what we do, right? We tell ourselves, be grateful, don't rock the boat. But that whisper didn't leave. Every time I ignored it, it grew louder until ignoring it hurt more than listening to it. That was my first real awakening moment. And I want to be honest, it didn't feel like enlightenment. It felt like loss, because awakening often begins when the life you built no longer fits the soul that's outgrown it. But here's the part no one tells you, and it's what we'll uncover as we go. Awakening has far less to do with spirituality at first, and everything to do with psychology. Your mind has been running a script, a pattern of beliefs that say who you're allowed to be. The moment you start questioning that script, your nervous system panics. It thinks change equals danger. So if you're feeling restless right now, confused, even a little scared, you're not broken. You're simply meeting the edge of your old programming. Stay with me, because in a few minutes, I'm going to show you the bridge that moves you from the autopilot existence into conscious awareness. And it's simpler and more sacred than you think. When I finally stepped away from that career, I thought clarity would arrive overnight. It didn't. What came instead were layers of noise, doubts, stories, old fears, rising like ghosts I'd forgotten. That's when I began to understand what I now call the psychology of unconscious living. It's not that we're asleep because we don't care. We're asleep because our mind has been trained to protect us from change. Every belief that we've ever accepted about success, love, safety, worth forms an invisible script. We wake up each day unknowingly acting out those lines. We call it life, but really it's rehearsal. We go through the motions, repeating the same emotions, wondering why we keep attracting the same situations. It isn't punishment, it's programming. Here's the paradox. You can study spirituality for years. You can meditate, pray, read every book, and still be living from that unconscious script. Even though I'd been walking a spiritual path since my early teens, I didn't actually become aware of awakening until this point in my life. I had practiced spirituality, but I hadn't yet witnessed myself. That was the difference. Awakening isn't something I learned, it was something I became aware of being. That realization shook me, because suddenly I saw how my good girl patterns, my perfectionism, even my drive to help others were rooted in an old survival wiring. They looked noble, but underneath they were about control, my mind's way of keeping me safe from rejection, failure, or loss. In a few minutes, I'm going to share the exact moment that pattern finally cracked, the instant I realized how to move from living on autopilot to living with awareness. But first, I want you to recognize something important. Your unconscious patterns aren't the enemy. They're evidence of how brilliantly your system tried to protect you. When you start to see that with compassion, you stop fighting the darkness and start turning on the light. That's when the awakening truly begins. And the bridge that carries you across that threshold is mindfulness. We'll step onto that bridge together next, because that's where you start reclaiming the power to choose. Awareness is the bridge between who you've been and who you really are. It's the moment you catch yourself mid-pattern and think, wait, I don't have to do this the old way. That pause isn't small. It's revolutionary, because in that second, your mind loses control and your consciousness takes the wheel. Let me show you what that looked like for me so you have a better understanding. One morning, not long after leaving my career, I was in the kitchen making coffee. Simple moment, ordinary day, but my mind was already racing. What am I doing with my life? How will I support us? And then something inside me whispered, just breathe. So I did. One conscious breath. And for the first time, I noticed the steam rising from the cup, the way the light hit the counter, the sound of birds outside the window. That single breath became the doorway back to myself. Now here's the strange part no one warned you about. The moment you start waking up, life often gets harder, not easier. Because awareness doesn't erase old patterns, it illuminates them. Suddenly you see your reaction in real time and you think, shouldn't I be past this by now? That's when you have to remember, seeing a pattern is proof of healing, not failure. You're finally awake enough to notice it. Mindfulness isn't a discipline reserved for monks on mountains. It's a moment-to-moment practice of remembering yourself. When you pause before reacting, when you take one conscious breath before you speak, you are retraining the mind to serve awareness instead of controlling it. That's the bridge, the place where psychology meets spirit. Because what you're really doing is re-parenting your own mind, teaching it that safety doesn't come from predictability. It comes from presence. In a moment, I'm going to share how this shift from control to presence began rewiring my entire life. But before we go there, I want you to try something with me. Take a slow breath in and exhale it out. Notice what happens when you allow yourself to simply be the observer of that breath. No fixing, no judging, just awareness. That right there is the beginning of freedom. And in the next part, we'll talk about how that freedom starts to rebuild everything you thought you knew about yourself. Once awareness enters, the real work begins. And I want to be honest with you, this is where many people turn back. because when the lights come on, you start to see everything. The patterns you've repeated, the roles you've played to feel safe, the way you have been quieting your own truth just to keep the peace. Awakening asks you to look at all of it, not to judge it, but to remember who you are beneath it. Remembering isn't about adding something new. It's about peeling away everything that never belonged to you in the first place. For me, that remembering came slowly, in everyday moments, walking outside barefoot after years of rushing, letting the breeze touch my skin like it was the first time, hearing my own laughter again, unforced and free. That's when I realized awakening isn't about escaping life, it's about embodying it. It's the sacred practice of letting your soul back into your skin. But here's the paradox. The more light you let in, the more shadow you see. People think awakening means bliss, joy, happiness all the time, around the clock. In truth, it means honesty. And honesty can hurt before it heals. There were days when I wondered if I was moving backwards. Old emotions surfaced like waves, grief, anger, fear, all the ones I'd buried beneath achievement and positivity. But those feelings weren't regressions, they were releases. Every tear I shed was an old story leaving my body. That's when I learned the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is energy leaving. Suffering is resisting its exit. Now I'm going to repeat that because that's really, really important. Pain is energy leaving. Suffering is resisting its exit. When you stop resisting, you start healing and you are remembering. So if you're in that tender stage now where everything feels like too much, please hear me. You're not breaking down. You are breaking open. This is the inner work of remembering. It's where mindfulness becomes compassion and awareness becomes love. Because you start to see your patterns not as proof of failure, but as an invitation to come home to yourself. And I promise, there is no finish line. Every time you forget, life will gently remind you. Every moment is another doorway back to presence. And in a moment, I'll share how this remembering began to reshape everything around me, my choices, my relationships, even my sense of purpose. That's where we begin to live from freedom itself. So here we are, the edge of awareness. That quiet space between who you were and who you're remembering yourself to be. If you followed me this far, maybe something in you feels softer now. Maybe you have begun noticing your own pauses, those tiny sacred seconds where you see yourself choosing differently. That's the beginning of freedom, not a lightning bolt revelation, but a slow, steady awakening that says, I'm here now. Take a breath with me. Notice what happens when you let yourself be fully present for that one breath. You didn't force it. You didn't earn it. You simply became aware of it. That's the whole practice. Awareness becoming life. Most people, as I mentioned, stop here. They wake up just enough to see the patterns, and then they slip back into the comfort of sleep. I almost did too, because awakening isn't a single sunrise. It's a rhythm, a continual choosing to stay awake when the world invites you to drift back. The mind will whisper, go back to where you know. But the soul will whisper, keep going. And that's how you grow into conscious living, by listening to the quieter voice and trusting that it is enough. If you take nothing else from this video, take this. Freedom isn't found in control. It is found in presence. Every mindful breath, every compassionate pause, every moment you remember you have a choice, that's awakening in action. So tonight, when the world gets quiet, ask yourself gently, where in my life am I still living by default? And what one small act of awareness can bring me home to myself? Write it, whisper it, and live it in the coming days. Because awakening isn't about reaching higher, it's about arriving fully where you already are. Next week, we're going to step into the next stage together. What happens when awareness starts reflecting itself back to you, when life becomes your mirror and every experience shows you the truth of who you are? And if this message resonates, stay with me, because the next 2 videos this week go even deeper into this process. First, how to break free from autopilot, and then how the psychology of awakening rewires your life. If this conversation is helping you remember who you are, take a moment to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. It truly helps this message reach more souls who are ready to wake up. I'm Cheryl T. Campbell, and until we meet again, many blessings to you and yours. And remember, even the smallest act of awareness can become a beacon. Be the light that inspires others to do the same. Bye-bye for now.